Hempsley is a wellness guidance company that introduces the basic health science behind a variety of natural wellness techniques. We explore everything from healing herbs to essential oils, nutrition, cannabinoid therapies, and more, and relay our findings back to you along with more trusted resources so that you can begin taking better care of yourself and your loved ones. We offer educational recipes along with introductory articles about information such as cannabinoids, terpenes, methods of consumption, along with thoughtful product reviews. And we also offer local hands-on events for our community where people can actually come and apply the knowledge they're learning to actual activities, as well as printed educational materials. And all of these things are designed specifically for a Midwestern audience. They're designed for people who are being introduced to the concept of this plant being medicine for the very first time. And for people specifically in prohibition states who may not want to incriminate themselves by interacting with or sharing our content. So to that end, we are not a cannabis website. Cannabis is just one small part of our conversation here. You know, we don't believe that cannabis is a magic cure-all, and we understand that it's certainly not for everyone. But we do know that it can be a really useful tool in your wellness toolbox, and we want to educate you about it so that you can start feeling empowered to make decisions that are best for you and your lifestyle. All of this is really to just normalize it in the context of a healthy, responsible Midwestern lifestyle. So a little bit about my background. I was born and raised in Columbia, Missouri, and I was a really good kid. I got straight A's, I never talked in class, and I spent my free time doing activities like youth group and Smoke Busters Club, and I even went on lots of mission trips in my summers. And I never once tried alcohol or drugs in high school. It wasn't until I went to Truman, and it was my sophomore year of college, whenever I had a friend back home in Columbia that was getting in trouble at school for cannabis. So I came back one weekend to give him a stern talking to, and the conversation ended with him lecturing me about my ignorance surrounding the plant. He told me that I couldn't judge it until I had done my own research and tried it for myself. And this was someone I really trusted and knew wouldn't lead me astray. So I took what he said to heart, did my research, tried it, and realized that it wasn't what I had thought at all. At that point, I started using it recreationally on the weekends because there was still a lot of guilt associated with using cannabis. You know, I was a good kid, and good kids don't smoke weed. But the more I used it, the more I noticed that it was really improving my health. I was sleeping better, I was exercising more, I was eating healthier, and it became an integral part of my self-care routine. And then it was the following year in 2013 when I heard, this is my self-care, when I heard the story of Charlotte Figge, who was a little girl who was having 300 grand mal seizures a week, and her parents were giving her CBD oil to subdue them. And by the end of reading this article, I was just completely distraught over the public's backlash against her parents for giving her a drug. And you know, coming from the background I did, I understood the public's concern, but also being the natural nerd I am, you know, I understood what CBD was. I had done my research, and I understood that she wasn't getting high. So I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that anyone could justify taking this medicine away from this little girl and sending her back into having 300 seizures a week. And I realized that people just didn't understand. That's just the simplicity of it. They just didn't understand what it was and what it was doing. So I became passionate at that point about helping educate people about this medicine. And at the time, I was studying visual communications at Truman, and I decided that the way I could help was by changing how people viewed cannabis in a very literal way. The market was just emerging, you know, it was 2014 when Colorado went legal, and I wanted to help give these brands a professional face that people would take seriously and lend them credibility in this new endeavor that they were doing. So in 2013, I started designing for the cannabis industry. I worked with startups all over the world and did a lot of traveling. I've been to lots of legal markets, exploring those, and learned a lot. But the more I traveled, the more I wanted to bring this back to Missouri. I wanted this for my own home. And I tried doing fundraising and signature gathering for New Approach Missouri and realized that I just really wasn't good at it. I found that, whenever you're standing outside the library and asking people if they support medical marijuana and they're just screaming no back at you, you never have an opportunity to engage them in a meaningful conversation and you never have the opportunity to change their perceptions. So I decided that that's where my strength lied, in education and talking with people one-on-one. So I had to figure out a way to bring this to my home. And I decided that whenever it comes to a vote, I want to make sure that people know exactly how they should be voting and that they need to get out there and vote, because that is how we're going to be able to change this. If people are still against it when it does come to a vote, it's going to create problems. So, working as a graphic designer in the industry, I am a big proponent of visual communication and the power of graphic design to help change perceptions. And I believe 100,000% that the success of visual communications depends on knowing and understanding your audience. And because of who I'm trying to reach, that is Midwestern conservatives. And because of my background, I have a unique perspective on that and a unique take on it that I think gives me a leg up in this area. So as I was working with all kinds of other brands across the country, I noticed that a lot of them were geared towards big city life or mountain life or beaches. And whenever I looked at that from a Midwestern perspective, I felt like that really seemed more like them rather than us, or more like vacation rather than everyday life. So I started thinking about, what does a cannabis brand in the Midwest look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? And that's whenever I came up with Hempsley. So with Hempsley, my goal is to make it very approachable. I want it to be comfortable, yet authoritative and professional. So whenever it comes to aesthetics, I'm very much going for a nostalgic vibe. I want it to kind of look like you're walking into your grandparents' home. Grandmothers are associated with warmth and comfort and nurturing. And whenever you have an issue, they seem to have all the wisdom. So I did lots of thrifting around Missouri for all of my props. All of the plates and glasses that you see in my photos are all from secondhand stores in Missouri. So they're things that you would actually see in these homes. When it came to the logo, I was very specific in that I wanted something that looked handwritten. I wanted it to remind you of something, a note that your mom might put in your lunchbox for school. Again, very warm, inviting, and comfortable. When it came to the voice, I decided to take the high completely out of the conversation. I realized that it was pretty hard to argue whenever you just presented the fundamental science behind how this plant works and don't suggest that people go get high. And so that is where I decided to take it. Now, when it came to structuring the business side, it was a little trickier. I had been working with startups for about 3 years whenever I launched Hempsley, and I had seen all the problems that they run into. I saw the issues with the licenses and fees that they were constantly being slapped with. I saw the issues they had with banking, as well as ever-changing regulations. Things are different from one week to the next in every state. I also saw lots of social media accounts get shut down, as well as inventory being confiscated. People had put so much time, energy, and money into investing in these endeavors, and it was all just ripped away from them. So I wanted to figure out a way to safeguard Hempsley against all of these things, because Hempsley is a brand that I want to endure for 10 years, 25 years, 50 years down the line. So I wanted to safeguard it. And I'm sure, as we all know, Missouri has a unique predicament here with the CBD laws. And so my original plan was to start doing Hempsley as at-home CBD parties. So kind of like Tupperware parties, where I would come into your home with a small group and have CBD products from companies that I'm partnered with, teach you how to use them all, and then sell those products. But just as I was about to launch that, the Missouri Attorney General sued 4 companies in Missouri for selling CBD. And one of the companies that I was working with, based out of California, didn't want to have anything to do with me after that. They stopped shipping to Missouri, and they told me that I should probably figure out a new business plan. And so I kind of took a couple months back and reevaluated and tried to figure out what I could launch this as, because I wanted to get it out into the public. Whenever I was talking with people in my home, people would ask, "What do you do?" And I would say, "Oh, I'm a graphic designer." And usually I just leave it at that, because I didn't want to be judged, and I didn't have a resource that I was comfortable sending people to that didn't make me look like a stoner or looked professional enough. And especially for people in prohibition states who don't want to have their search history show that they were on Leafly or High Times or any site like that. So, right now we are definitely changing the patient, or playing the patient's game. Our mission is to help get medicine into the hands of patients who need it. And, in the long run, I'd love to have a role in the cultivation, manufacturing, and distribution of cannabis. But in order for that dream to happen, things are going to have to change. Perspectives are going to have to shift. And rather than waiting around for that to happen, I wanted to be proactive and help in my own way. So for now, our goal is just education. Without education, there's always going to be resistance to this. You can have 80% of the public supporting this, but that 20% is going to present an issue, especially whenever they have big pharma and alcohol companies and the government on their side. And so I believe that the long-term success of this industry and being able to sustain it over time is by educating everyone, educating the general public, and making this information common knowledge. And if we can see anything from history, it's that those people who are opposed don't want this information to get out. So since we are taking such a strong approach to education, we do not sell any cannabis-derived products, simply because I don't want to give anyone a reason to be able to shut us down. Again, we are playing the long game here. We're trying to build a brand. And while we can't sell CBD right now, we are building that brand, and we are becoming a trusted resource for our community. We're also able to test the market, which has been really beneficial before there's too much on the line. We can see what our audience resonates with and what they don't resonate with. And we're also helping prime the market so that whenever it does become legal here, people are familiar with the terminology. They're familiar with what terpenes and cannabinoids are and the different methods of consumption. And it's not so scary and intimidating, because this is a really big problem in legal states still. People are afraid to walk into a dispensary because they don't want to feel stupid and they don't know what they're looking for. So being able to familiarize them with it before is going to be really beneficial to making sure that we have a big market whenever it does come here, and patients to support that industry. Now, of course, this has created some issues with generating revenue. So we've had to get pretty creative with how we get income. So originally we launched as just wellness guidance. So people could schedule consultations with me, and I could answer all of their questions related to cannabis or other self-care techniques. Again, we're not just cannabis. We explore lots of different modalities. So that was the original plan, but I quickly realized that I wasn't good at charging people money just to talk with them. I want this information to be widespread, and I felt like charging people was counterproductive to that mission. So we kind of backed up and we started doing affiliations with various companies. And for anyone who's unfamiliar, affiliate marketing is where you build up a following via social media or a blog through regular content, which for us is those articles, recipes, and reviews. And then people who click through and make a purchase on a third-party website, you get a cut of. Now, the problem here was that most of our conversion, the people that were actually buying things, they were buying CBD products, which is great and wonderful, and I love it, but we still couldn't collect any of that revenue because we're in Missouri and trying to safeguard ourselves against being able, saying that anyone, we generated revenue from the sale of CBD products. So from there, we decided to start making printed educational materials to help spread this information even further. So we launched with a series of 5x7 prints that highlight the government's patent surrounding cannabis. For anyone who's unfamiliar, the government actually filed a patent in 2001 claiming cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants, which is in direct conflict to their listing it as a Schedule I drug. So this artwork is meant to be proudly displayed in your home to help act as a natural conversation starter to educate the people in your life about this medicine. You know, when you have artwork hanging on the wall and people are curious, what's that about? You have the opportunity to dive as deep or as shallow as you want to talk about that, and in a real heartfelt way. We also have started creating informational pamphlets. So all of our content is online completely for free because we want it to be widespread. But we've seen that there's also a demand for print materials. So, you know, I always say that we have two audiences here at Hempsley. The first is young people who are cannabis enthusiasts already. They don't need convincing that this is good. They have experienced it firsthand, and they want to be able to share how it's helped them or a loved one with people in their lives. For them, we are looking to make them confident enough to articulate that this plant is medicine and how it works in the body without being labeled a stoner. So with this audience, we've really found that they prefer the free online content. You know, we grew up in the digital age where you can just sit down and Google and have information given to you. So people don't want to pay for that content, and that's fine. But whenever you want to tell your neighbor down the street or your coworker or your grandmother about this, sometimes it's hard to convince people to go visit a link and then click through on some pages. So these printed educational materials offer them an opportunity to hand something to those people that they can take away. Our second audience is the older generation who grew up during reefer madness and are very skeptical about the idea that this plant could maybe be medicine. So these people need a lot of reputable research in order to feel comfortable exploring that. And that's our goal here. We just want to help people feel comfortable enough to start exploring the fact that this can be medicine. Not even necessarily getting them to try it, but just opening their minds a little bit. And we found that this audience really prefers print materials. They aren't as comfortable with the internet, and so this is a great resource for them. We also create hands-on learning experiences for our community where we do all types of activities, from making lotions and balms to tinctures to food recipes that incorporate all kinds of natural wellness, including CBD as well as essential oils and other herbs. And this is a great way for people to be able to apply the knowledge that they're learning so that they can feel comfortable enough going home and implementing it into their daily lives. This gives them an opportunity to ask questions and become more comfortable with the material. And then lastly, we offer visual communication services for other natural wellness companies. So one of the companies we're doing that with right now is 420 Science. And 420 Science is an online head shop, and we created a co-branded educational pamphlet that goes in all of their orders that introduces their customers to what cannabinoids are, what terpenes are, what the differences between different kinds of smoking devices, and so that they can be more informed and, again, go out and inform the people in their lives if they so choose. This is really helping us build brand awareness. You know, by co-branding these materials with other companies, we're also establishing ourselves as an authority in the educational space for the industry. So all of these things, again, are just to help share the knowledge, spread this so that it can be as widely accepted and known as possible. And whenever we are in the industry and this is something that we want to push forward, I feel that it is our responsibility to educate people. You know, people who are against cannabis aren't going to go seek out this information for themselves. They are not going to go to an educational seminar. They aren't going to sit down and Google and research themselves. And if they flip to an article in the newspaper about it, there's a good chance they're going to glide right over it because this isn't important to them. This information needs to come from people who are already embedded in their lives, who they trust. And that's not necessarily going to be me. It's going to be all of us together that make that difference. Even whenever it's scary sometimes. You know, I was saying earlier that I would just stop at graphic designer and, it is my responsibility now as someone who wants to see this industry progress to educate people. So, to that end, I have come up with a little way that I like to approach the topic of cannabis with people. And again, I think this is going to strengthen the future industry. The more knowledge that can be out there, the more people who can be accepting of this and willing to try out different cannabis-related products, the more this industry is going to thrive. So the first thing is that I never go into a conversation thinking, I'm going to teach them about cannabis. I just start engaging with people in meaningful dialogue. I take an interest in their lives and ask them questions. And sooner or later, they usually say something that makes me think, hey, I think you could benefit from CBD. Either they say, they have horrible back pain, or their niece has seizures, or their grandmother has arthritis, whatever it may be, I use that as my in with them. So I identify that way that cannabis can help them. Secondly, I will think of a specific product that they can safely access wherever they are. And whenever that's in Missouri, it's always a CBD-only product. I'm never going to recommend that someone go find a dealer or engage in illegal activity to get this medicine for themselves. And I also, even if I am in a legal state like Colorado or California, I often just recommend high CBD products, if not just CBD products, because I think that suggesting that someone go get high can really be a barrier to the conversation that you're trying to open with them. So just talking about CBD, I think, is a really awesome way to start into that. Next, I will just ask if they've heard of CBD while offering a testimony about someone with a similar condition who has used this product. So say they've said that their grandmother has arthritis, and I can say, oh my gosh, well, have you heard of CBD? My grandmother has horrible arthritis, and she's found a lot of relief with Apothecana's lotion. And at that point, I'm trying to make this as heartfelt as possible. I want them to know that I care about their well-being. And it's really hard for them to get mad at you whenever you're just trying to help them. So that is kind of how I approach it. From there, I'll explain the endocannabinoid system, because usually their response to have you heard of CBD is no, especially in Missouri. So I just briefly explain what the endocannabinoid system is, usually saying something like, well, cannabis has compounds that support our endocannabinoid system, which is a system in our bodies that's responsible for keeping all of our other systems in balance with one another. And a healthy endocannabinoid system is vital to our well-being. So you also don't have to get high to use it. Unlike THC, which is a cannabinoid that can produce a high, CBD is a completely non-intoxicating cannabinoid. So after I give my little spiel, I just kind of stop. I read their response, and if they're visibly uncomfortable or not engaging with me, then I just leave it at that. I've planted the seed at that point, and now they can water it at their own pace. No one likes to be preached to. I'm not trying to convince them necessarily in that moment. It's just planting that little seed so that they think, oh, maybe this could help me. Maybe I should go research it. And I found that, whenever you approach it in this way, it's pretty hard for people to get upset with you or feel like you are pushing things on them, because I didn't take any kind of political stance in that. I'm just presenting facts. The facts are it supports your endocannabinoid system, and it's available nationwide, and you don't have to get high to use it. And then I just encourage them to learn more and direct them to more resources, which for me is often Hempsley. So, I found that this medicinal, science-based approach to bringing up why cannabis should be legalized for Missouri is very effective. Even people who I can see are not supporters often don't refute me whenever I'm talking about this, because they don't know enough about the endocannabinoid system to refute me. And so either way, I've planted that little seed of knowledge in them. But if perhaps they are not taking to that and you need more reasons, there are lots of other reasons why cannabis being legalized in Missouri is great for our state. So the first is, of course, the opioid epidemic. Back in 2016, one out of every 66 deaths was related to an opioid overdose. And cannabis has been proven to lower the amount of opioids needed to treat conditions, to help with pain. And so people are lowering their doses on their own, and there is less risk of side effects and overdoses and becoming addicted. Another reason is jobs. The cannabis industry brings in all kinds of jobs, and it's not just growing and selling cannabis that it does. It creates jobs in marketing, in manufacturing, in cultivation, that is related, but construction, education, graphic design, management, finances, all sorts of things become open because of this. It also, of course, is going to generate tax revenue for the state. If New Approach Missouri's initiative goes through, that's going to really support our veterans, and that is great. It can also support new programs, and we always are needing more money, right? So, in conclusion, whenever you're going to be in the industry, I think it's very important for you to just keep yourself educated, and there's always new research and new things coming out. Make sure that you're staying up to date on those things, and make sure that you're educating the people in your own lives, because that's what's going to make the difference here. And also be aware of your audience. Be respectful of what their perspective is. That's the biggest thing I found. I understand why people are so hesitant about this medicine, and whenever I engage in conversation with them, I try to always make sure that I'm respectful of their own views. So, thank you all so much for your attention and for being here. Appreciate it.